And so it is a pull and tug of, well, do I want them to follow this exact SOP, or do I want them to also be the captain of their own ship and be the captain of my ship, really, because I need help, because I'm captaining some other people's ships. Since I now have these newsletter email marketing clients, I'm managing all of their emails and all of their content. And what I learned from this experience is the importance of not hiring initially for your contractor to work immediately in the business, but help you work on the business. So to free up your time so that you can work more with your clients, and to free up your time so you can do more sales and outreach methods.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high-performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Manager podcast. A lot of times when we think about management and managing a team, we think about it in the traditional corporate sense. So you've joined an organization, you have this team that's growing, and your job is to develop them, keep them engaged, and you want to keep them as long as you possibly can. But there are other aspects of managing that sometimes we don't talk about as much. And those are the times when maybe you're a small business person and you're hiring your first person. Maybe you're a solopreneur who's learned to monetize your own skill set and you're bringing on people to help you bring your vision to life. Those are all instances where we have to use management skills. And so I'm so excited for you to talk to someone who I think is absolutely amazing that I met almost 2 years ago, who has recently launched a very successful newsletter business and is going to share with us what it's like to be hiring people as she grows her vision. So I want to welcome Lauren Gibson to the podcast. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Kamaria. It's so great to be on.
I am so glad to have you here. First of all, it's been amazing to watch your journey as you had this kind of concept and you've worked it through, and now you've turned it into Letters Launched, and you have your own newsletter Connections, which is the impetus for this conversation. Tell us a little bit just about you, your journey, and a little bit about your business now.
Great to be on. So I originally started this business January 1st of this year. I announced on LinkedIn that I would take on 3 pro bono clients, and fortunately 3 people reached out, and I did 2 to 3 month activations with them, which helped me create this business that I have today. Prior to this, I was doing online networking events on LinkedIn, and I was actually in the Web3 space. And prior to that, I was living abroad in North Africa and teaching English, and my whole experience has just taken me all over the world and all around these different spaces for me to exist now, where I love being able to work with people and tell their story and tell their experience through the written word.
That is really amazing. And I have to say, the impetus for this episode came from the written word. So I've been following you, obviously. I have read earlier editions of your newsletter and given you feedback.
Yes.
And one came across a few weeks ago where you were talking about your experience hiring and firing assistants that you had brought on to support your business. So I want to start there in the conversation. Just tell us a little bit about the newsletter first, and then what made you feel like you wanted to bring on people to help you bring your vision to life?
Well, I will also say, Kamaria, you were one of the first people, yes, to initiate this, because even though I started this on January 1st, as you said, we met a year prior, and I was showing you ideas of a business, and you were saying, oh, no. I'm so grateful to have met you a year prior, because it's these connections and these experiences which relate to the name of my newsletter is called Connections. And so I like to tell the story of how connecting with people like yourself, or connecting with a contractor, as we're discussing today, how those experiences create our lives and our businesses in the B2B space. So the newsletter that I wrote about a month ago was about me taking on 2 people from the Philippines, where I hired one person for about 5 hours a week to do sales and outreach on a platform like Upwork, and then the other one to do about 15 to 20 hours a week for my marketing materials on a platform like LinkedIn, where they were assigned to create carousels and cheat sheets for myself. But as you read in my newsletter, I ended up, unfortunately or not, letting them go within 2 months. And that was quite personally a triggering experience because I personally have experience being let go myself as an employee. And so that experience reminded me my own. And I really had to fully step into this business owner mindset through this experience. And I think right before this podcast, we were talking about how experiences are the ones that we just have to go through. And so you have hired as well an assistant, but you have experience working with people in that domain.
Yes. Well, what's so interesting about that, right, is that the work that I do centers around managers and managing.
And people.
Right? Yeah, I'm in the people business and you're in the people business.
Now I am.
Right now you are. And I think that there's a space where you start to realize that as a business owner, you are the first manager. And so I think the difference between your experience and my experience is that I come from this having managed a team before, having hired before, having delegated before, having had to separate people before. And so the context of that, I was able to be like, how is this different? So now that I even run my own business, how is managing a contractor similar or different from managing someone who worked for me for many years? And so when we start off our own businesses, it's an idea in our head. We are solopreneurs. We may not have enough work in the beginning to need somebody else, but you've been fortunate to grow so fast that you're like, hey, I need support. And then there's a need to also almost instantly learn all the management things that people might have had many years to learn.
What is an SOP?
What is an SOP? And in our corporate space, we have so many processes in place. So, we would have started with a job description. What does a person need to do? How do you hire? When you're starting your business, you're just winging it.
I'm winging it. It's my money and I'm putting it down.
Yes. And I think that's the other thing about managing this space that's a little bit different is that when you are in your corporate life, somebody else is footing the bill for that employee. So even though you're managing the work, you don't feel the impact of it. But then when you are the person who has to pay that invoice every week, you do think about it a little bit more critically.
And it makes you think about your employee differently than a full-time work. I know right before this podcast, you were showing me your notes, the presentation, full-time employee work versus contractor as a solopreneur. And that really resonated with me because the full-time employee, when you're working with them, you are growing them, you're guiding them, you're coaching them. And really, you don't have as much skin in the game. So you have time to do that. But when you're working as a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, you don't have time to guide them, to coach them. You want them to already be trained up. And so when I started working with one of my contractors, the one that was doing my marketing work, she had great experience in a tangential creation design post. So I knew she could do design. But when I started to ask her to do my design, I realized she was not a professional designer and she was not able to convey my vision into my design. She kept trying these maximalist design approaches, which looked amazing, but it was not the vision that I had for my business. And so I ended up spending so much time with her, which I thought initially was a great idea because when you initially hire someone, you want to get to know them, spend time with them so that they can hear your thought process. You can show them how it's working. But after about a month, I realized that I was spending more time showing her, okay, this is great. You did a great job, but actually this is how so I ended up realizing, well, if every single time I'm going to be taking time with her to edit her work afterwards, then that's just wasted time for me. And maybe I don't need these carousels, cheat sheets, and these designs on LinkedIn as much as I thought I needed. I need someone who actually knows the grand scheme of social media and not the very small do this design for me kind of approach.
The phrase I always use is I need an architect, not a carpenter.
Oh, okay.
That's the phrase that I use.
I love that. I love that.
That's the phrase that I always use. And that's the distinction. I think what you've brought out is just 2 points that stand out to me. One is the distinction in the types of employees. So what we were going through before, for the listeners, before was a presentation that I did for the Small Business Association. We talked about managing the mix. And as a business is growing, you have different types of employees, and all those different types of employees have different needs. So you do have your full-time employees, and those are the ones who you're going to make that longer term investment in. You do want them to grow in the company. You want to rely on them heavily. You want them to see themselves in the business success. And more often than not, they're wholly owned. I guess it's a terrible way to say this, but it's by the organization, meaning you're their primary employer. And so you're building that long-term relationship so that let me spend time to grow you, even though you're experienced. I might bring you in out of college. That's that one type. You might have a part-time person, and this person is not necessarily going to be their full-time. It's not their main priority, but they can either be somebody who is less experienced and they're like an intern. Like I had an intern, and I found that I was doing a little bit more coaching with her, but I fully understood that. Or you can have a part-time person who is very seasoned, but their level of commitment to you is not the same. So again, they're not looking for you to fulfill their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. They're just trying to meet a need, and so are you, and that works. And then there are contractors. And I think what I learned even in this process is that I don't hire contractors for development opportunities. We're hiring contractors for their expertise. And so we want them fully baked.
Yes.
But that's something we learn through trial and error. And then also, I think what's nice about that, and what I heard you say, was that you discovered your need was different. And that's actually one of the benefits of being able to manage contractors, is that they don't have that expectation of forever. So if that part of your business no longer needs to be serviced, they're absolutely okay that, hey, this contract is ending and we're going to do something else. Yeah.
And I think another thing we can discuss is also the second contractor that I worked with, and how she was actually trained for, I guess, around 5 months before I worked with her through a friend of mine. And when I started working with her, I realized that the training that she had was actually not doing the goal or the result. It was not achieving the result that person had wanted. So I had to actually retrain her in that sense. So it's not just about having someone that's experienced, but there is that part of getting someone who may be experienced, but not
in the right thing.
Yeah, in the right things.
And it's so interesting because these are all the woes of hiring, right? Like, what do I need this person to be able to do? And what does that look like to do it here? You said she'd done it for somebody else. And so she had the knowledge and processes that were suitable to his needs, but not your own. And I think I want to just kind of take it back a little bit, because the first step for me in hiring somebody was literally, what do I need them to do? In talking to other entrepreneurs who have stepped in this hiring role and stepped in the same pothole, we were fuzzy about it sometimes. We know we need a thing. And we might have even seen other people do the thing. Like you said, you need carousels, or you needed these posts. And then you reevaluated that and you're like, do I really need that?
Yeah. So am I building the right house if they're a contractor?
Am I building the right house? And is that a good investment of their time and money? And I spent a lot of time, what do I need her to be doing? And I started even charting it out. Like, what is she going to be accountable for? And I would say that's something you do before you hire anybody. That's the large lesson that I learned. I think what I've done wrong, and I don't know if this is your experience, is I hired first and figured it out second.
That's what I did. And I had to take a month off to think, what do I actually need?
Yeah, what do I actually need? If I had 4 quarters on the table,
right,
where am I going to put those 4 quarters? And it helps me to prioritize and then be like, okay, so she's not going to do this. She is going to do that. And then ask myself, do I really need her to do that? And then the second part of that, and I do think this is where a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners fall down, is that I know what's in my head and I know how I used to do it when I had to do it myself, but now I need to transfer that knowledge to somebody else. And do they know how to do it the way that it needs to be done for me? So have you taken time to write down those SOPs as you're doing them? Because then you know that they were, and training that person on that SOP. And I think a lot of times when we want people to already come fully baked, we also have to remember that there's a ton of different ways something can be done.
Yes.
That doesn't mean it's right for how you want it done for your business.
Absolutely. And so it is a pull and tug of, well, do I want them to follow this exact SOP, or do I want them to also be the captain of their own ship and be the captain of my ship, really, because I need help, because I'm captaining some other people's ships since I now have these newsletter email marketing clients. Actually, what I learned from this experience is the importance of not hiring initially for your contractor to work immediately in the business, but help you work on the business. So to free up your time so that you can work more with your clients, and to free up your time so you can do more sales and outreach methods.
Yeah.
So I learned that from that book, which I will say that I've never read, and a lot of people probably have never read it, but at least you can gain the main points from it.
Literally listening to an audiobook on the way here, and
Yeah.
it was about 10 chapters, and I was like, this could have been a pamphlet.
Right.
The main point was
Yeah.
you need help doing your things.
Yes.
Hire people to help you work on your business, in your business, so that you can do the things that only you can do for your business. To whoever that gentleman is, I hope I got that synopsis right.
I'm sure you
That
did.
felt like the Cliff Notes versions. But I think that's so important. So how did you go about then figuring out what were the right things that people needed to work on for you?
So I realized a step-by-step process, which is to first eliminate everything that I don't need to be doing, and then next see what I can automate. So that's a lot easier with AI and automation today. And I'm working with several people, including the producer of this podcast, on some people's automations, and then to figure out what you should delegate, because there are certain things that AI does not do well, as we were discussing earlier, and that do need more of a human touch. I think the element to that human touch component that I'm actually figuring out with one of my clients is how you can teach some of these overseas hires, especially, how to think in a certain way to form judgments around a certain deliverable. So, for example, one of my clients has some workers who do writing for content such as newsletters, and some of the rationale that they come to at the very end of the newsletter does not appear to deliver the message the client usually has when he would be writing the newsletter for himself, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. There's a contextual difference, right? There's a frame of reference difference.
Frame of reference.
Yeah. There was a time when I was leading a global team, and I said something about like brick and mortar, and someone looked at me who was located in a different region. They were like, those words mean nothing here.
Brick and mortar, right.
That's a very American thing to say. And so there's that translation of context for who are you writing for, and what's the technical aspect, but what's the contextual. And honestly, even with my AI, sometimes I have that problem. When I'm using it for helping you to draft something, and I'll be like, that's not where I would have gone with that. So there is a how do you then create that shared understanding with different people so that you get to the same outcome.
And I think what I'm trying to help with this client is to solidify the frameworks that they have developed, that they clearly sell their own clients on. But when they have contractors working on their clients' work, and when they're delivering that, the message isn't coming through. And so there is an element of, how can I create these frameworks as I am growing as a business owner? Because as we do grow, maybe we want to step outside of our managerial position, and instead we're managing other people
who are doing the work.
Right, who are doing the work. Although I'm not in that space right now, I'm definitely in the space
of contractors, right?
Of contractors.
Yeah. So as I think about the maturity of a business and how management happens, right? As a business owner, you are the first manager.
Right.
You have to do hiring of people. You have to do, again, the delegation, the training, all those things. And then you get to a place where you start to hire your first managers. But in being the first manager, there are so many decisions that have to be made that we don't always bring to the forefront and understand because we haven't had the experience yet. So the first one is that, do I actually need to have a person? Is it something AI can help me do, or do I need a person? And for what kinds of things? I think for me, I had to sit and ask myself, am I delegating things that are of this person's skill set? Is this her strength? So I tried having her do a couple of things, and I was like, you know what? It's not that she can't do it, but this is probably not the best use of her time, her skill set. And so once I went back to the things that I knew she did really well, that solved that problem. I had to say, okay, I'm going to have to find somebody else to do this thing right here. Right. And then it's, how do I give feedback when it doesn't meet my expectation? How do we have a conversation to make sure that if I'm getting something that I can say, this is really great, but as it turns out, I actually don't like X, Y, and Z. And I'll tell you what has worked for me. And so this is for all, even my internal managers. I still have one-to-ones with my contractors. I have a one-to-one, an hour-long one-to-one every week, and I have a 15-minute check-in midweek. And during our hour-long one-to-ones, we actually review a process or a piece of work every single week. And that has helped me to explain to her why something is or is not in alignment with my vision. There was a landing page that was done, and I looked at it, and I could tell she used AI to create it. And I didn't mind that because let's be efficient, friends. But when I looked at it, I was like, sometimes AI will miss the mark and it will give you words. Words are on this page.
Right.
So technically, check the box. You did do the thing I asked you to do. But let's have a quality conversation, right? When you read this, what does it tell you? And that's where we have that conversation about, okay, so if you're going to use it, let's make sure that it's giving people enough information. I gave her another example that I had created before, and I was like, it's closer to this. And we have that conversation about why the product is or is not. So it's like a quality conversation. Right. And I think that helped her to start getting closer to my voice because I still want her thinking about it. I think the danger for me that I've seen with the sort of the merging of the AI with the assistant is the task will get done, but is it done in a quality manner that's going to make me happy?
Yeah.
So even though we hire people that are fully baked, they still need feedback, and we still need a process to give feedback on a work product so that the next iteration gets a little bit better.
Yeah. And I am realizing that today is just every conversation that I'm having with my new assistant, who is a little bit more baked, so to say. She does have experience with that. And I am definitely just working with her on showing her a little bit of this is actually what I want. And so today, for example, this morning, we got on a call and she showed me some of the designs that she's done because I'm having her do a little bit of designs, but not silo her into one specific role, but to have her do more of the grand social media role. And so she is doing a little bit of multiple things. But one point I wanted to touch on is that what I realized from hiring her versus the previous designer was that when I immediately met with her, and her name was Aubrey. So when I immediately met with Aubrey, I discovered that she and I are very similar. And actually, that was a red flag. And I felt it in my gut. I did not want someone who was immediately like me. Yes. I wanted someone who was very opposite to me to keep me in line and not be the ideator and the creative person. And she was great at that. And I could see that she is that person, but I need someone to man my ship because I am deciding the navigation, but I need someone to drive us, right?
Yes.
And so my new assistant is really the driver. And she is, even though I may have a grand vision, a grand idea, she'll come back to me and say, oh, but Lauren, are you going to actually do the thing that we created a whole content calendar for? And then I'm reminded, oh, yes, you're right. You're right. I need to do that. So thank you so much.
That's such an interesting point because I think, and for my EOS friends, forgive me, I'm going to probably mess up this term. So like an EOS, the entrepreneur operating system, they say, right, you have a visionary and then you have an implementer. I think that's it, the second person. Yeah. But those are separate roles. And a lot of us are visionaries. I'm the same way. I have grand
entrepreneurs
ideas. Yeah, because you have these things you want to bring to life. But you're looking for somebody who's going to be your operations, like who's
operator.
Your operator.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
it. Yeah.
Okay, Chad, I know you're listening. Just correct me, send me a note.
Please.
But you need somebody who's going to be like, this is the engine of how things go forward. I love that you recognize it as a red flag that she was just like you. Because our tendency is to hire people who are just like us and to be like, I'm great. So the person I hire like me is going to be great, but we don't need two of me. I always tell people I'm a butterfly. Yes. We do not need two butterflies manning this ship. We need an anchor somewhere.
Right.
And that has been my need. And so I agree with you. When you're making your hiring decisions, make them based off need, not feelings. Almost, you need that person who's going to help you do those two things, because those two roles, the person who can create the vision and see where you're going is super important. That's typically you as the entrepreneur.
It's going to be you.
The person who helps you bring that vision to life. I think that's your most important hire, because without the systems and processes to execute on the things that you need to get done, all you have is lofty ideas. What I have seen in fellow entrepreneurs, people who are just starting their businesses, the failure to execute is what sinks them to get it done, to get it out the door, to have it happen. And so it's so important to be thinking about, as you're hiring people, like, how are they helping you to execute on the vision?
Right.
And to also pull yourself out of the way to not be the bottleneck.
Yeah.
because that's where things fall apart sometimes.
Yes, they can fall apart there. And I've heard also from this Buy Back Your Time and Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, how important it is to hire people who are going to help you make more money. So how are they adding to you or your business? How are they adding value to your business so that you can make more money, so that maybe you can pay them more? And so that's also what I am realizing is the importance of working with people who are going to help you buy back your time.
Yes, and you touched on something that's really important, the part about, and then maybe you can pay them more. Something that's really important to me as I think about the work is exchange versus extraction, meaning this is a dual relationship. And with contractors, because we're not their full-time employers, we're often not even their only employer. I found my assistant because I had been on another podcast and she reached out to me and then we had a conversation, but I was fully aware that she may have other clients. And I was okay with that because when I don't have her full time, I don't need her full time right now. But I also was saying to her, listen, I love what you do. And I have entrepreneur friends who could probably use somebody for 20% of your time or however many. I have no problem introducing you. I have no problem creating a win-win scenario for the both of us. And I do think that's very indicative of the future of work. There are a lot of people who are going to take the steps to monetize their skill sets on their own, but will figure out that they need a team. And the same way that organizations talk about engagement and loyalty and all those things, which really are meant to be the corporate version of a win-win, as people who manage smaller businesses where maybe we're not doing, that's not our language, we still have to find the win-win between us and our contractors because they can choose to go be somebody else's contractor.
Absolutely.
There's no, I'm loyal to you, Kamaria. It has to make sense for them as much as it makes sense for us. And we have to figure out what that looks like.
And yes, I think you had touched on this before we started recording, which was around the value exchange. And so it reminded me of when I initially worked with my first contractors, the value exchange that I was hyper fixated on was actually their hours. I made them record their hours in a spreadsheet because honestly, one of them was doing that with my friend when he had hired them. And so I made that important for them to realize, okay, I want you to show me your hours. And I realized that I was hyper fixating on like the number of hours they were spending on this so much that it was diluting. I lost track of what was the actual result that I wanted.
That's the value.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because I actually don't pay my assistant by the hour. The conversation we had was when we started talking was what do I pay her per month? And so like for that, we talk about what do I need to have accomplished in the next couple of weeks? What are the deliverables that need to happen? And then I don't micromanage her time, but things get done. And so we have a Trello that we use so I can figure out where it's in progress or things. I think what it comes down to at the end of the day, and this is both for if you're a contractor, if you're managing contractors, or if you're managing people in a corporate environment, it's ways of knowing. So you want to know, do I know what this person's working on this week? You want to know from the time we met last to the time we've met now, is there some demonstration of progress? So can I look at something and be like, oh, this work has been done? Is there a fair value exchange for what I'm paying them for versus what I'm getting from them? And I think those questions are the ones that we answer. What are the ways of knowing the answers of that? And I just think that it's been easier to be like, well, per hour, we do creative work. Yeah. And we never know how long something's actually going to take. And so what I found when I was paying another assistant by hour is that it can get away from you if you don't really have a strong estimation of what something should take. And then you start to micromanage and go, well, did it really take you 3 hours to do this document?
I was micromanaging.
Yeah, you lean into micro. And I just don't want to do that. Now, of course, if you do it the other way, again, you still have to have ways of knowing. Each week, we follow the same flow in our conversation. We start off with just hey, how's it going? We go through the things that she's accountable for. She shows me the progress. We look at different things. I show her what I'm accountable for because again, I don't want to be the bottleneck. So I told you I was going to give you this access, do this thing. Here it is. And then we talk about the dates we have coming up and what needs to be in preparation. So if I'm doing a podcast, if I'm doing a speaking engagement, well, there are actually milestones that lead up to that and afterwards. So then we plot out what needs to get done before and after each of those events. So there are still ways of knowing without just being like, how many hours did you work? And I just found that it was so much easier once I released that. I still know because there's milestones to everything that we do, when I'm not looking over her shoulder and being like, well, when are you working? I don't concern myself with when she's working. It could be at 2 a.m, her time or my time. Right. It's fine.
Yeah. And so with my current contractor, I also just told her, I just want to see some results. And so one green flag that checked off for me was not how many carousels should I be doing a week. It was more, what is the result of by the end of the next 3 months, so Q4 of us working together, that would look like a great result. And so to me, that also showed me that she cared about my business.
Yes.
And so it wasn't just a contractor. This is someone that maybe I eventually hire full time because she becomes maybe my chief of staff. And I have started to work with some clients who have a small business, but much bigger than mine, much more growing. And I am working with their chief of staffs because they have way too much work to do. And I see the vision of me wanting to have a chief of staff someday. So, and when you have a chief of staff, they're sometimes going to work 20 hours one week because they don't have anything to do. And then someone's going to work maybe 50 hours the next week because there's a lot of client deadlines and there's a lot of people that they need to be speaking with.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning to get into this space of not just hiring contractors for an hourly basis and for a quick project, but people that I do want to grow with. So even though I know you showed me this amazing presentation about the full-time employee versus the contractor, as someone who is trying to grow her own business to have full-time employees, I'm still envisioning that future.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think that presentation was called Managing the Mix. And we talked about it's the mix of employees because you are going to have a mix of employees. Even larger companies have contractors, part-time, intern, full-time. Like you're going to have this mix.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily always going to be just contractors, but I think for me, it's so important to be intentional, to be aware of what each person needs and be intentional about how you're giving them what they need. But I love the fact that when you start with a contractor, you get to build that trust and that experience with them.
Right.
Dating before you get married, right? Like you get to try and build a relationship in a lower risk situation. And then you get to bring them on board full time, but they already know you. They already know your vision. They're already bought in if they decide to come in. So it's a really good way to bring people on. So I love that's your vision for where you want to see yourself grow.
Absolutely. I see this as the future of work, as you were discussing earlier. The future of work is more people creating their own businesses, and we will be forced, I think, in a way, because there have been a lot of issues around work today with the rise of AI. There are graphs that are showing how since ChatGPT released, the number of open roles has declined, which is fascinating. So if open roles are declining, and we still need to make an income, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to maybe start our own business, and we are going to perhaps hire overseas, which is what a lot of these corporate companies are doing today. And so the experiences that I'm going through, I love talking about it with you because I know this is going to help people who are going to be going through this experience or who are going through it right now, as we are.
As we are. And I think I love that's why this podcast, and I know we're coming to time here, but I think that's why it's so important to share that managing is more than just the way we think about it now. It's more than just, I've been with a corporation, I have a company of a certain size, and I'm growing a team. But really, as we start thinking about what work is going to look like, no one hold me to this, but I think that the size of corporations is going to go down. And I think there is data right now that says the number of smaller businesses and solopreneurs, that is actually rising. And so there will be more people figuring out different ways to monetize. It doesn't mean you don't need support or that you're going it fully alone. I think solopreneur is almost a misnomer, because a lot of solopreneurs actually have support. So it's not, oh, it's just you. No, they're just not on my full-time payroll. It doesn't actually mean I don't have a team that brings things forward and people I can pull in when I need to. It just means that I don't have them full-time. I don't pay them benefits. So if you could go back to the start of this year and give yourself 2 or 3 pieces of really good advice going into hiring your first person, the experience. So go back to Lauren before she hired her 2 people. What would you tell yourself, or what advice would you give yourself?
I would say do everything that you've done so far. It's just the experience. It's the experience so that I can have these moments like I have with you today. And it's not going to be perfect, but perhaps I am going through these experiences so that I can share them to the audience and for them to pull out a specific piece of information, which I understand that is the goal of this question. So if I were to tell the audience really what I would say is one piece of feedback that I guess we gathered on this is don't hire yourself. Don't hire someone who's like you. Hire an architect. I loved that. So hire someone who can help manage you because you're working on so many different parts of your business. And also block out time to understand what your contractor is doing, because I realized that myself, as you're hiring someone and you're just paying someone, it's not that the work is just being done, because you're not just hiring a software to do X, Y, Z. You're hiring a person. And so you need to block out time from your calendar to conceptualize where they're going and what are their goals for this month, this quarter. So you are growing a business and you're growing a person.
Yes, you are. I love that, because I think that's a point that needs an underscore. Even in corporate America, we have managers who are reactive. And that reactivity comes from not taking the planning time. And as I think about what you said, I literally have to, before my own meetings, sit down for an hour and say, okay, what are the goals coming up? What are the things I need to talk about? That planning time, preparation is leadership. And sometimes we get so bogged down in the doing that we've stopped valuing that preparation is a thing. Like preparation is doing, thinking is doing.
Yes.
And so I love the underscore on make sure that you are taking the proper time to think and prepare and plan to help the person you hire be successful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for even offering some pieces of advice for my own business. So I really appreciate being on the Manager to Manager podcast.
Oh, thank you. And for listeners, I know I typically talk about managing the corporate life, but as the future of work is changing, you may find yourself still managing, but in a different context. A lot of those skills of managing a team in a corporate space are still relevant. As you can see, you still have to think about the hiring, the person you select to bring on your team and what you need them to do. You still need to think about how you communicate and delegate work to them, how you give them feedback, and how you think about even their growth in your business. So these are all things that you should still be thinking about. And if you are not a manager in corporation, but you're managing a business, I challenge you to still develop yourself as a people leader, because even with growing AI technology, you're still going to need people to make your business grow and to be successful. So on behalf of Lauren and myself, thank you for joining us for this edition of Manager to Manager. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.